Allergies are among the most common chronic diseases in Europe. According to the estimate, by 2015, 1 in every 2 Europeans will suffer from an allergy. Today, 1 in 4 people has some form of respiratory allergy. From infants to the elderly, people of all ages are affected. 2 groups in particular, however, are more vulnerable: children and the elderly.
It has been the textbook opinion that the aged are not affected by allergies. So we wanted to see, 1, whether they will be affected by allergies, and 2, whether ambrosia plays a role in allergy in the aged. And surprisingly, we found that allergies are very important in the aged, and that there is even a percentage of elderly people who develop allergies past age 60, so people who never had allergies before may develop allergies when they are aged.
Knowing how the things are doing in children, we could predict how that would look in future. What we know is that allergies or allergic diseases can progress to other respiratory chronic diseases. So it was really important to investigate atopy and ragweed atopy in children to see how the future looks.
Among allergens, pollen is one of the most common causes of respiratory allergies. In particular, the pollen grains of Ambrosia thomisifolia, also known as common ragweed, carry some of the strongest pollen allergens ever known. Less than 20 ragweed pollen grains per cubic meter are able to cause allergy symptoms.
So we found out that the prevalence of allergic diseases is high. It's more than 30% in children. Also, the prevalence of sensitization to ragweed is high. It's around 15%, and it starts even when the exposure is very low.
Common ragweed is a highly invasive weed. It thrives in fields, along roadsides and riverbanks, but you may also find it accidentally in your backyard. Ragweed is quickly spreading in Europe, posing a great threat to human health, economy and the environment.
Common ragweed first became a problem in Europe around the 1940s when it started spreading rapidly along transportation networks and in contaminated seed. And there are now 3 centres of population, one around the Pannonian Plain, especially in Hungary, in northern Italy and along the Rhone Valley in France. And they are the main areas that are experiencing problems with increasing pollen loads and health impacts. But because of the long distance transport of pollen, a much wider geographical region surrounding those centres of population also experiences health impacts.
Ragweed has physiological thresholds of temperature and moisture that determine the extent of its distribution. Thus, as all living organisms, it is sensitive to a changing climate.
Climate is changing, and the changing climate in future years should bring us warmer temperatures everywhere, but in particular in Europe, and also more dry weather. Drier southern Europe is among the predictions.
Global warming and the associated changes in rainfall and other weather variables may directly and indirectly affect ragweed life cycle and distribution. Climate scenarios indicate that a wet and cool pre-ragweed season, followed by dry and hot weather during the pollen season itself, cause pollen loads to increase.
So the work we've done in Atopica has confirmed what we see elsewhere in the literature, that we're experiencing an ongoing invasion event. So without any climate change, the problem will still get worse as the species fills in the gaps in its available range under current conditions. But when we incorporate climate change scenarios into our models, we see a number of additional effects which make the problem worse in terms of its geographical spread and its magnitude. One of those is that the distribution of the plant will change, and we expect a northward shift of its distribution so that countries in the western area of Europe, like Denmark and the UK and Belgium, might experience worse problems. The second thing that happens is that the pollen season gets longer, so as frosts are delayed, the plant has an opportunity to produce flowers and pollen later into the year. And the third thing that we see is as CO2 increases and temperatures increase, the size of individual plants gets bigger. And so individual plants become more competitive and produce more pollen. So even without climate change, we will see a worsening problem, but with climate change, we see the geographical extent and magnitude of that problem gets much worse.
What are the likely consequences of the ragweed invasion on human health?
Increased pollen across Europe is likely to have a number of health consequences. The first is likely to be that more people will experience symptoms to do with ambrosia exposure. We call this sensitization to ambrosia pollen. Obviously, within any analysis that we do, there is uncertainty. And although looking forward to the future, we would not be able to give very definite numbers as to the number of people who may be affected, we can say that looking forward to the future, the number of people sensitized to ambrosia pollen is likely to more than double within the next 50 years.
Along with the changing climate, also other factors such as urbanization alter the environment in which pollen-producing plants live, while other pollutants may interact with pollen, making it more allergenic.
We know that climate change will have an impact on air quality, and we know that climate change will have an impact on pollen and allergies. By implementing complex models, we were able to produce new maps of the status of air quality and pollen in the middle of the century. And these maps will allow us to make the best choices in terms of environmental policies to make sure we can improve human health over the long run.